Hello everyone. So if you're here for polished and sometimes puzzling plugins to perfect your accessibility, then you're in the right place. For those of you who cannot see me, think of the stereotypical Aussie. Tall, long, brown blonde hair, blue eyes, surfer physique, killer smile, graceful, and all around delightful. Now throw that out the window. I'm a chubby 5'3", soon-to-be middle-aged Caucasian woman with blue eyes, short brown hair, and who dresses like a 5-year-old let loose in the art room kind of style. My hair is adorned with 2 large hair bows, which I am probably too old for, but I think I can pull it off. So let's kick off. Kylie lives with chronic daily migraines, cluster headaches, which are evil SOBs, photosensitivity, which can invoke seizures, and all of these disabilities she acquired almost 12 years ago. She also lives with CPTSD. Yeah, like all superheroes, she has a really shadowy backstory. And recently she's been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. Yet she is still a bunch of fun and likes to talk about herself in third person, so it seems. I was working in digital accessibility before then, but in 2020, after a near-death experience, I decided to solely focus on digital accessibility, which is my passion, and move instead from the full stack development I was doing prior. Between COVID waves, I contracted bacterial meningitis. Luckily, I was found by a friend on the bathroom floor after I'd passed out and been violently ill. Everyone assumed that it was a bad cluster headache attack, but my friend had the sense to call an ambulance. While I was in the ER, I started convulsing, I lost my ability to talk, my sight, my blood sugars dropped to 2. I am not diabetic, but I was slipping into a diabetic coma. Suddenly, I lost all my pain and the fear set in, and I honestly thought I was going to die. It was a week that I was in the hospital, and almost a month before I started to get back to my normal. And I walked away without significant permanent damage, which is not common. As I found out in the hospital, 50% of people who get treatment for bacterial meningitis do not survive. So this experience cemented my resolve to move 100% into digital accessibility. In my short time in accessibility, I have worked as both a consultant and within organisations. I have worked with the Australian government, the New Zealand government, the Australian's largest insurer, Australia's largest bank, the Australian Disability Network, and the National Broadband Network. There's also a whole smattering of other organisations I've worked for too. I'm currently Secretary of AussieWay, a professional membership organisation for digital accessibility specialists, and I work for the Commonwealth Bank of Australia. But all opinions that are expressed in this video are my own and do not represent CBA. I am also the founder of AliPals Accessibility Consulting, and you can access my website at alipals.com.au. I am also soon to be the founding member of Hairbows Anonymous. I have currently 52 hair bows and the collection is growing. Additionally, I have 2 tuxedo cats named Stormageddon Dark Lord of All and Ashilda. The Whovians out there will probably appreciate the names. But now let's have a look at the perplexing plethora of plugins. So, by the end of this session, I'm hoping that you will be able to identify multiple free plugins which can assist you in demonstrations, development and testing, identify the operations of demonstrated plugins, learn some time-saving tips and tricks, and have a bit of a laugh and decide to come along to my next session, which is On a Roll, what roller skating can teach you about digital accessibility. It's sure to be a bit of fun. So, these are just a sampling of plugins which are available out there right now for the Chrome browser. Some of these you will know and some of these you don't. You can get lost in plugin searches in Chrome. I would know. There are thousands out there. I've included a list of some of the plugins in my speaker notes of the presentation file. Now, which of these plugins are performing? Well, most of them. Now, most of them are actually very good at one thing, and they do one thing very well. But as soon as you try to get them to do multiple things, well, that's a bit of a struggle. So I guess now you're asking, well, which ones are which ones are problematic? Well, yep, That's right, all of them. So almost all of these plugins are also problematic. If you don't know how to work the plugin, or if you don't think like the plugin, then you're probably going to struggle regardless. That said, there are some plugins that are a lot more problematic than others. Plugins, really in a nutshell, are a bit of a dumpster fire. And please forgive me in advance, I'm about to assault your ears with my own rendition of a well-known classic, Billy Joel's favourite, We Didn't Start the Fire. Wax, read aloud, wave and axe, high contrast, alley, watch equal web access. Dev tools, alt or not, and the access bot, sight unseen, alpha text, SAS accessibility. Agent switcher, web hint, open dyslexic Python, qual web, Funkify, and accessibility by alligator, ox tools. Give me some better tools. Silk tide, read up more, iAble, and many more. It was always since the world's returning. We didn't stop the fire. No, we didn't like it, but we're trying to find it. I think that is just about enough assault on your ears for one day. So now that I have humiliated myself enough, let's move on to something that I am actually good at. I promise, no more singing in this session. Okay, so what are some of the significantly problematic plugins? Now, these on the slide are in the order of my level of hatred. So, first up, we have the Color Contrast Analyzer. This tool takes forever to parse a website and then only parses part of that website and attempts to show you visibly what does and doesn't meet the color profiles. But the color masks that they put over the top can be really hard to see if you have low vision. I do struggle with my vision due to my migraines. My eyesight is different every day. So this really doesn't work for me. The desktop app is much better and I can operate with that when I'm only using one screen. The next item on this list is the Funkify Disability Simulator. Now, they market it as being a free tool, but they charge you for it in 4 days. So that doesn't really give you much time to try out the tool and then demonstrate it to your stakeholders or your developers or your testers. It doesn't even explain that the dyslexia simulator that is in that actual tool has been scientifically disproven multiple times. And yeah, if you put on a green screen filter, then it can make it feel a little bit like the Matrix, but it seems pretty expensive just to do that. Next, we have the User Agent Switcher. Now, there are multiple user agent switchers out there for the Chrome browser, but this particular one is, well, just problematic because, well, it doesn't switch. So it doesn't do the one job that it should do really well. So some websites, you can trick it into thinking that you're working on a Mac and Safari, but many more of them with this tool you cannot. And so it sees your interactions additionally as a robot, and so capture or testing the ordering on your site, well, that doesn't go so well. And as for Apple Pay, it will never work with this tool. So give up on agent switching and actually purchase a real device farm because secondhand products really are pretty cheap these days. Oh, sugar. So things just got real. Kylie dropped an A-bomb. Wave is like the free tool that everyone in digital accessibility tends to start on. And this accessibility professional is actually saying that it's not just problematic, but that it's significantly problematic. Please don't pull out the pitchforks yet. Don't cancel me. Like, I really need you to hear me out. I want to show you something. Okay, so I'm currently on the Sydney Zoo website. I am actually a member of this zoo, and I have had trouble even logging in so that I can actually go to the zoo, and I have to ring them up instead. So I feel since I'm a member, I can kind of bag out on this side a little bit. But what I want to show you is actually around Wave. So if I come on and I click Wave and I turn it on, as you can see, it looks a little bit different on my screen than it may to other people. Now, I tend to navigate the web at 150% zoom, and I also do usually increase my text size more because of my vision limitations. Now, if I come down, you can see that I have 12 errors and 44 errors on this page. I honestly think there's quite a few more. And if I scroll down, you can't really see at the bottom here what I'm meant to be looking at. Now, some of you who are fluent with Wave would say, well, Kylie, you can click on the Details tab and then you'll have a better view. And you are correct, I do. But then if I go back to Summary, I now no longer have access to the Hide CSS button that I did before. So I have to remember to keep opening and closing the tool, and it gets quite frustrating. The other issue that I tend to run into is that, well, it's quite big and I don't have any way to shrink it so that I can see more of the website. And what you'll also find is there's quite a lot of information that is visually displayed. And yes, you can turn some of this on and off, but most of us don't. And now when you have these sticky headings, it takes up even more room on your screen. So it makes it harder for you to be able to work with this content. So some of you will love Zoom and it will work for you perfectly, but for me, I see it as particularly significantly problematic. Moving on, I like to categorize my plugins into 4 categories. So the first ones are princesses. All right, we all love a princess, especially the Disney kind. They are pretty, perfect, and always under public perception. They are always charming and generally not too technical, but very conscious about their presentation and the presentation of the monarchy or their organizations. Princesses are your content creators, your marketers, your business stakeholders, your empathy builders. They don't need to know all the hard details about digital accessibility. They just need to know what keeps the organization running and makes it look fantastic, and they are great at that. The second group of plugins that we have are your programmers. So they are the perfect, practical, high-performing plugins that are for high-performing people. Yes, that performance may happen when the programmers are under pressure. Don't worry, I promise I'm not going to crack out into Queen karaoke now. We're done with the assault on your eardrums. Even if it's after midnight and a lot of coffee or Red Bull to keep those programmers going, these plugins, like their programming counterparts, do perform. They do one job and they do it darn well. They are every programmer's best friend. So the third type we have are poverty-stricken paupers. Look, I've done my stint in accessibility testing, and we always get treated like circus animals. We're expected to perform under short time frames with less resources, under short time frames. And did I say short time frames? So these plugins appeal to the very time-poor specialist, whether they be a programmer or they be a tester. It'll help them get the job done. Finally, we have the last category, which I hold for one particular plugin. It is a plugin so perfect and performs so perfectly to other plugins, all other plugins pale in comparison. This plugin will rock your world, so stay tuned. So let's take a look at some of those popular pretty princess plugins that perform. All right. So these plugins are quick to understand, have immediate impact, and able to be demonstrated to and by anyone, whether they have technical knowledge and skills or not. So the first one, Sight Unseen, is great for people that want to feel a screen reader but don't want to deal with the complexity of it. So have you ever felt that you don't have the time to learn a screen reader, or that it's going to give you sensory overload if you try to use a screen reader? So maybe you forgot your headphones, and that's a good reason not to use a screen reader because you're at the office and you're going to annoy everyone sitting around you. So this is where Sight Unseen can help. It also helps with one of the biggest problems I've seen when people start using a screen reader and specifically say that they want to test like a person who is blind. Often what will happen is they're too nervous to put on a screen curtain, so they will actually still be driven by their eyesight regardless of how they're navigating with that screen reader. So Sight Unseen allows you to put on a screen curtain, but also to hide that screen curtain when you need to have that little peek to figure out what's going on in the site. It also shows everything in text rather than through audio, so you don't have that sensory overload. Now, the next one, Silktide Disability Simulator. And there are two Silktide plugins. So one is the Disability Simulator and another one is the Accessibility Checker. Both of them work quite well, but the Disability Simulator is the one that I recommend for those princesses. So for our marketing gurus, for our business stakeholders, for anyone that doesn't have strong technical skill but needs to get information and build empathy quickly. Okay, so sure, it does fall into the category of some of the examples have been statistically and scientifically disproved, but it is really a good empathy builder and it is free and won't lock you out after a matter of days. Finally, high contrast. As the name suggests, high contrast does exactly that. It allows you to put on different high contrast filters and it's really brilliant when you have a migraine. I use it quite regularly on the yellow and black setting. I've had many people in the office stop behind me and do a double take and then ask, why is your text size so big? And is there a problem with your monitor? Because I can see it from space. Like that yellow and black's really weird. Do we need to get someone for facilities to help you? I always get a little bit of a chuckle when that happens. Okay, so let's have a look at a demo of some of these plugins. Okay, so let's take a look at Sight Unseen and how you can use it instead of a screen reader to navigate your website. So I'm going to come over to the browser over here and I'm going to select Sight Unseen. And what you'll immediately notice is there is a screen curtain that has come down, and you can see here I have the games and activities, arcades, laser tag and more, which is the title of the page. Now, you can navigate this using some commands that you have in a screen reader. So for example, navigating by headings, but for most people who haven't used a screen reader before, they're going to simply tab an arrow around. So I'm going to tab through this site and show you how it works. So my first tab takes me to a link, which is the privacy policy. So that all makes sense. I go to the next and I can see that I've got a button which has the name accept. Now I've got a link that has promotions, and if I continue to click through, you can see that we've now got a bullet icon and it's called May Play, which may not be quite as helpful. So if I want to find out where this information is, I might just peek at the website and hope that it will show me exactly where I am. Now, unfortunately, for this bullet icon May Play, it's actually off screen at the moment, which is why we are not seeing it. Now, this is very useful, like I said, for people that need to navigate really quickly and get an understanding of what it might be like for someone who is blind. Now, I want to show you what happens when there are errors on a page and give you a little bit more interactivity. So I'm going to open up my own website, and yeah, I'm guilty. I still have some accessibility issues that I'm working through. So this is my home page. I'm going to add on Sight Unseen, and I'm going to start tabbing around my home page. So first things is skip to content link, then I have a link to my website, I have a second link to my website because I figure we need more. I've got my phone number, I've got my email, and then I start going through navigation menus, right? So now if I stop and I take a peek, you'll see my navigation menu is expanded, as you would expect. Right? So I'm going to tab through all my navigation menus, and then I'm going to run up to an unlabeled link. Now, people might say this is really easy to fix, and I am still trying to work on it. Unfortunately, all my social media is set in my theme, and at the moment I don't have a link coded for that, so I am trying to work around that. So if you hit an unlabeled link on my site, guaranteed it's a link to my LinkedIn profile. And if I peek at the website, it is this link here. Okay, so now the next thing that I want to show you is Silktide. So Silktide, as I mentioned, I'm going to jump now onto the NYU site, because this is a site that I can navigate at a lower zoom level. Because they have such large buttons and large menus, it makes it a little bit easier for me to navigate. And for this particular plugin, it's always helpful to be, at a slightly smaller screen size. So if I come and I open up the Silktide plugin, you can see here that it gives me first up, the dyslexia simulator. Now I'm not going to do the dyslexia simulator because it has been proven that it is not as effective as other methods. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump onto color, and I'm going to zoom out just a little bit more on this so you can get a bit more of an impact on what actually changes. So if I turn off red, for example, it's only a minor change. If I change red to being greatly reduced, you can see the page has pretty much turned blue. Now, this lets you simulate different forms of color contrast issues, as well as simulating what color blindness may affect different people. And as you can see up the top, it tells you statistics on color blindness. Now note, color blindness and the prevalence of it can change from country to country. And that's something really well to know, is that in Brazil, for example, there is a higher population of people who are colorblind. I used to work a lot with people in Brazil, and we used to always have to take great care when we were making our Excel files at the time accessible. Now, you can also test things like cataracts. So my mum actually has cataracts, and they weren't identified until she had a cataract at about 50%, limiting her vision. So I'm going to crack this up to 50% and just see what it's like. And if we zoom in, that is very, very difficult for me to read, and in fact it's giving me a headache. So I'm going to turn that off really quickly, but I think you see how this can be so important for people to use to build empathy, and how quickly it can make people realize, where you need a larger text because it's going to get blurred, or, other different components that you want to test. Now, you can also test things like tunnel vision and central vision loss. So if I turn this on, it will actually cause central vision loss around wherever I currently have my cursor, simulating eye movement. Now, I'm going to close out of that plugin, and instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you now that tool that I use a lot to make navigating the web easier for me and to reduce my pain, which is high contrast. So if I select high contrast, I generally navigate with a yellow on black theme. So if I choose yellow on black, now you can see there was a subtle deviation in these colors before, and I've completely lost that deviation now. So if that deviation was trying to communicate something, I probably would have lost the context. Now, for the people, I'm just going to switch us back to normal. For anyone that may be on the call that knows and supports this NYU page, there is a little icon, so there is a color change, and there is also a little icon down here to indicate that this particular tile is different from this tile. Now, I didn't pick up on that the first time I looked at this site, and actually I didn't pick up on it for quite a few times that I looked at this site, and I couldn't make hide nor hair of what was actually going on with the color scheme. When I turned a screen reader on, that's when it identified to me that these were all news articles. So maybe if you are working on this site, you might want to make it a little bit more prominent rather than just having a little angle icon there. Maybe have like an icon of a newspaper just to make it that little bit clearer. Now, There are different types of color contrast people would like. There are different types of high contrast that people like to use. So another one is grayscale. And if we go to grayscale, you can see it's fairly similar to what we were seeing with the yellow and black. All of these now look to have the same coloring. So that's kind of what you can do. There's other values you can set. You can set it as a default theme. So every time you come back to this site, it's going to have this set. That's completely up to you when you are using it as assistive tech rather than using it for testing or demonstrations. Okay, so let's jump back, and I want to talk to you now about our programmer plugins. Okay, so our programmer plugins of choice. Now, I do not have time today to show you all the ins and outs of these programming plugins. I definitely can't spend the time in an hour session to show you every single thing that it can do and how helpful it is. However, I will be doing longer presentations of individual demos for these plugins at a later time, and I will be putting them up on my website in both free and some paid training courses. So I do encourage you to come onto my website, check out the blogs, and subscribe to my newsletter, because then you'll find these videos as you need them. Now, Lighthouse and DevTools, there's been many people who have put out videos showing how to use these tools. So I'm sure if you do a little bit of hunting on the web, if you can't wait for me to create one of these videos, then you should be able to find another one that can get you up and running in no time. Also, at Access U on Thursday, they are going through a discussion of DevTools and the new components that are coming up in it. So I encourage everyone to go see that. Now, these tools are just as useful for our poverty-stricken paupers, but I'm a huge believer in making sure we bring accessibility as early into the process as possible. So that's why I recommend them being called programming plugins and starting with our programmers. Okay, so let's do an example. So I'm going to walk you through Web Developer, and I'm going to start by looking at time zone. Now, this is an unfortunate thing that I often do find with Sight Unseen. Like I said, no plugins are free of issues. Often when I click it again to try and remove it, it doesn't move, and it treats it like a tab. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close this window and I'm going to open up in a separate browser. All right, so Time Zone is an arcades and games place that we have in Australia. I particularly like it. Ever since I was 7, I've been playing those claw machines, and nearly every time I play, I win something. I've definitely made well more than the money I have spent. And my favorite is once I pulled out one of those Loungefly bags that retails for $100 out of the skill tester on one turn. So I use Time Zone quite a lot, but their website does leave some things to be desired. So I'm going to open up the Web Developer, and the first thing I want to show you is how this screen works when I turn off CSS. So I'm going to come over to the CSS and I'm going to say disable all styles, and this is what the page looks like. Now, I know we didn't walk through the page to begin with, but there were no yellow dots on that page. So this is something that is off screen or is hidden, and the reason it's blowing up is because it is a large image, which obviously CSS is being used to shrink, and that's kind of a regular thing that you would normally see. The problem though with this site is that your navigation options are kind of spaced between these circles, which makes it really hard to use. So, I'm having to scroll quite a distance to get through each of these options. So it's not a really great experience if people are not enabling CSS. Now, if I jump over to the NYU site, I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to show you what this looks like without the CSS. All right, so same thing, the images blow up quite large, which is okay. But if you come down, you can see this is a really structured web page. We can see all the navigation menus, and it's very clear and easy to understand, even if your CSS is not turned on. So now I'm going to jump back again. I'm just going to turn that CSS back on, and I'm going to take you over to images. So on the Images tab, you can display all alt attributes. So you don't have to go hunting through DevTools or use any other tools. You can just come here and hit Display Alt Attributes. Now, what you'll see is we have some images of text which have alternatives, so that's fantastic. Good to see they're doing that. But if we scroll all the way back to the top of the page and we come down a little bit, you can see we've got this decorative image. So underneath it, it says arcade and games, and it has some context about the arcade and the games. But this image itself sits there saying that the alt is games. So it's really extra information that isn't required. It doesn't provide anything to the user just by saying games. If we scroll down, we'll see the same thing with bowling, and we'll see the same thing with bumper cars and laser tag. And what I really want to show you though is if we come down to this bottom one, the icons here for the social media have their labels, which are TikTok in this case, if I look at the first one. Now, I've looked at this previously, and the link also has the name TikTok separately to the alt text of the icon, and they also added a title to the image. So you actually have the situation where for some assistive tech, it's going to get read out as TikTok, TikTok, TikTok. I don't know about you, but I hate having to constantly listen to a clock and remind me that I'm running out of time, even in this video. So that's what you can do with Web Developer. Now, I'm going to come back over to the NYU example, and I'm going to show you a couple of other things that we can do as well. So if I come over to the Miscellaneous tab, I can say Display Color Picker. And then down here very close to my toolbar at the bottom, it will show me the colors based on what I am hovering or what I select. So currently I'm hovering over a purple background, so it shows you what that hover color is going to be, and the selected color is white. And if I were to come up here and click, it will change the colors. So this is a quick way to get an understanding of what color you're using. So if you are, for example, a designer and you don't think it's been implemented with the brand colors that you suggested, you can come in here quickly and you can look at it without having to move into another tool. Now, another thing that is really handy in this tool is that if you come over to Tools, you have options to validate HTML. So a lot of people forget to do this amazingly. And look, it does, most assistive tech and most browsers these days do handle poorly created HTML, but look, it's really something that there's no excuse for and you should be checking. So I'm going to hit Validate HTML and you'll see it pops up in another window. Give it a moment because it might think I'm a robot. And as you come down, it will show you here where there are potential errors, where there's just information that you need to know, and it might be a best practice thing. So that's what this will do. Now, for those with really astute eyes, you probably noticed that there was also in this tools a validate accessibility. Now, I don't use this, and there's a good reason for that. So if I click this validate accessibility, it's going to open it up in a new page. And yeah, you guessed it, it's opened Wave again. And it's open with my defaults of 150 zoom, and you can see this just doesn't work for me. Now, even if you don't have Wave installed, if you install this plugin, it will allow you to use Wave. So if you like to have everything in one location, then I suggest install a Web Developer, and then you have both. Okay, so I'm going to switch us now back to our presentation. And, oh, actually, I didn't show us much of DevTools. So let's just jump back to DevTools for a moment. So to access DevTools, what you can do is you can right-click on a website. So I'm just going to move out. So if you right-click on a website and you go down to Inspect, this then brings up a view where you can see the code that is sitting behind the scenes. You can also turn, so I've currently got it turned on to show different views of how this would render on a mobile device. So if I change it to an iPhone SE, I'm going to increase to 100%. Now, I can still increase this to more and to larger as I need. So I can still be looking at what it would look like on a mobile device, but if I'm, zoomed in, so I can actually work with it. I'm going to zoom out for the time being, and I'm going to turn off the mobile view. Now, what I want to show you is some really good things that DevTools can do. So if you select this icon, which will allow you to inspect individual elements, and then you hover over an element, it brings up a dialog. And if you look at that from top to bottom, in this case, I'm highlighting a div and it's identifying it as a div. It is showing what the size of that div is. So in this case, 692.31 by 107.98. It shows you the color of the div, so the color is actually set to white. It shows you the font size, and it shows you other information as well. So at the second half of this, you can see that there's a contrast, which it is showing, and it's 21 constant contrast. So there's a green tick next to it indicating that it meets color contrast levels. And at the very bottom, it tells you whether or not this is keyboard focusable. Now, for other components, it will show if there's, if it's a button, it will show you the name and the role information. So maybe if I roll over the button here, you can now see it's also got the name, which is called all NYU, and the role is of type button. So that allows you to see some really quick things that's going on with your site. Now, additionally, in DevTools, you can come down and you can change components on your site. So anything that is around the CSS. So if I come here, for example, and I click on this background color and I make it aqua, you can see because it's changing the card promos have now been updated in color. So that's a few little things that you can do if you are a programmer and you want to quickly check, you know, how is this going to look if I tweak brand colors? How is this going to look if I move items around the screen? Because all of the CSS is open to you. All right. So now I'm going to jump back to our presentation. And we're going to talk about some of the plugins that are good for our time poor paupers, our time poor paupers, they decided, exactly like I've said it, it's too confusing if we call them paupers because people mistake it for porpoises. And so in a pretty problematic poll, they did advise that they prefer to be identified as poverty-stricken professionals because they never have a budget. So when we talk about our poverty-stricken professionals, as we mentioned before, they have very compressed timelines. We want plugins that work well, get the job done, and don't make us feel like trained monkeys. So the first one that we have is Andy. And if you're in the US, you've probably heard of Andy. If not, you should really check out the Trusted Tester 508 certification, because to do that free certification, you will use Andy quite a lot. And it's really a great certification to do. It opens your eyes to just what digital accessibility is all about and the power of this tool. Now, the second one that we've got here is the IBM Equal Access. And now there is another session that's going to be at Access U this year, which I believe is running on Wednesday, which will be looking at this tool in more detail and probably the new iterations of the tool as well. So if you're seeing something in this video that doesn't quite match up to what they're showing in that session, it could be that I have an old version of the plugin. Now, next, you might wonder why I have Axe below these two options when I'm testing. So these kind of are in my preferred order as well for usage. Now, the reason that I prefer IBM Equal Access is because Wave and Axe can be a little bit too visual sometimes and doesn't quite work with my Zoom. IBM Equal Access is much more text-based, which makes it a lot easier for me to consume the information and to understand it. Now, Axe is like the preferred plugin predominantly procured by accessibility professionals. Oh, I really have to stop these tongue twisters. So this has a lot to offer, but every man and his dog has demonstrated this plugin before. So I'm not really going to go through that today, but there are plenty of places you can go online to find a really good demonstration of that plugin. And it is a fantastic plugin. Whenever I'm doing my testing, I do a lot of manual testing because, as everyone would know, only 30% of the web content accessibility guidelines can be tested with automated tools. The rest of it really does require manual interrogation, and even some of that 30% you need to look over again and again to make sure that it's operating correctly and not a false positive. So I'll often test with Andy, IBM Equals, and Axe, and sometimes some other tools as well. Now, finally, we have the web developer. So yeah, it's back. As I said, it's great for programmers, but it's also great for your testing team. I find it very quick and easy to find some of those things that I'm curious about, like, is there alt text on this image? Makes it a little bit easier than having to go through and scroll through the code or wait for a tool such as Axe or IBM Equals to tell me what's going on. So we're going to go to a quick demo now of Andy and IBM Equals. So I'm going to jump back into my browser, and what I'm going to do for this one is I'm going to show you back on that Sydney Zoo page that we had before. And now I do apologize, the Sydney Zoo page does have flashing icons and moving things, and it can be very distracting. I'm going to try and steer away from those flashing things because they do also physically affect me, but they may pop up as I am running some of this demonstration. So I'm going to come over and I am going to open Andy. And so these are all the plugins that I have installed. As you can see, Andy doesn't sit in the usual place of the plugin. And if you go to that Trusted Tester 508 certification, they will instruct you how to actually set up Andy. It's very simple and straightforward, and it will be added here onto your bookmark bar. So once I select Andy, what it does is it pops up this banner, and I'm going to zoom out just a little so you can see more of the web page, and we're going to scroll down just a bit so we don't have all of that scrolling and animation going on. Now, what Andy allows you to do is if you come along and you select the modules, you can look at focusable elements, graphics, links, buttons, and all of these. Now, what it's going to do is if you select an item, so let's go with the focusable elements, and again, it jumps me back to the very first element in that list. So I'm just going to scroll again just off that animation. If you come over to this side, it shows you how many focus elements were found. It shows you where there are accessibility alerts that you may need to investigate to see if they're an issue or not. So if we select here, we can see that there's 8 items that are links which do not have any names or titles or inner text. So if I click one of these, it's going to jump me up to that link. And I do apologize for the flashing, but as you can see, it is this search icon that it is highlighting, and that's where an issue is. Now, if I select another one, it's going to do the same. It's going to jump me to the link and it's going to show me that information. Now, I am just going to scroll down a little bit more so you don't get affected by all the flashing and distraction. Now, you can also show this for other things such as your graphics. You can bring up your graphics and you can see which ones are ARIA hidden and which ones have an alert. And you can also go through each image. So if I just tab through, I'm going to jump through all the different images that are on this page, and I'm going to find one where there is hopefully a little bit less flickering. And okay, well, we're still sort of stuck with flickering, but you can see here that there's a next image. It will then show you for that image what's going on. So you can see the Andy output is Plat Pass Carousel. That is the name that has been given to the image. It's not a very useful name. So in this situation, I probably wouldn't be happy with that. And you can continue on as you would to see what they are, what the alt text are set on these images, and it's a really nice, quick, clean way to find that information out. Now, the other things that you can do with Andy is if you come back to your focusable elements, you can turn on title attributes, you can show tab ordering, and you can show labels. So if I select this tab ordering, what it will do is it will show little numbers above all of the items that are keyboard focusable to show you what the order is. Personally, I find this a little bit difficult to navigate because they are all over the place and the numbers are quite small. So nothing can really replace tabbing through and using keyboard only navigation, both with and without screen readers, is very important. So there's plenty more that you can find out about Andy, and I'm not going to go through much more of it today, but do check out that Trusted Tester 508 certification. So now I'm going to jump over to a second tab, which I previously set up. So unfortunately, one of the things that happens on my machine is that IBM Equals really runs rather slowly to do its first page scan. And I didn't want to waste time with us sitting around waiting for it to run. So I've let it run in the background. On my work computer, it actually runs perfectly fine, and it comes back in less than 30 seconds. It's just my personal computer, which is a little bit slow, kind of like me on some days. So as I said, it's a very text-based interface, which works better for me. So I can zoom in, I can see the text at larger size, I can navigate it pretty well. Now, it still can grow and take up half the screen, but the good news is I can rearrange to what works for me. Just have to wait for the lag on my screen to catch up, unfortunately. There we go. So now what I would show is you can add filters. So if you come onto the filters, currently I'm showing all the warnings, all the information, and all the errors. So I'm going to turn off the warnings and I'm going to turn off the recommendations for a moment, and this will then just show all the errors. Now it does take a little bit of getting used to how to read this. So this is why some people may not prefer it over Wave or Axe. But for me, like I said, it's very useful, and once you get used to using it, very powerful as well. Now you can change how you're going to order this list. So you can pick whether you want it by element roles, whether you want it by requirements, so it will look at the different WCAG criteria, or if you want to go by rules. Now, if I leave it on WCAG criteria for the time being, I'm just going to select one of these items. And you can see what it does is it jumps you over and it highlights again the component that is in error. Now I'm going to scroll down. If you come over and you select Learn More, and again, I'll just scroll down because of the flashing, you can then get a full text description of what is going on, what the violation is about. You'll get why it's important and that information. You'll also get what the component is and the class name so that it's easier for you to identify it if you're having trouble with identifying it visually. And then it explains to you basically information from the WCAG that you should be trying to fix. Finally, if you come down the bottom, it'll be linking you out to really helpful information both from IBM and from the WCAG so that you can find out exactly what you're looking for and how to provide recommendations. So it's a great little tool. I'm a huge fan of it. Hopefully that session on Thursday will be showing some really cool new tips and tricks that people can use for using IBM Equals. Now, the one thing I didn't show was how to open IBM Equals. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come into one of my browser windows. I'm going to go to Inspect, same way that you would find DevTools, same way that you would find Axe. I'm going to click up here and you're going to see I've got Axe installed, so there is Axe DevTools, and then I have an accessibility assessment, and that is the IBM plugin. So I'm going to click that, and that will then bring up my screen, which I could then start a scan on. And like I said, it's a little bit slow today, so I'm not going to show you that scanning, but I have previously shown it to you as to what it looks like and how you can navigate. All right, so that's what we like for our testing team. So now I want to move on and, well, all right. So we've just done that demo and I was a little bit slow to update my screen. But the other thing that I did forget to mention about IBM Equals is that you can export it to an XLS file as well. So you can import it straight into Excel, which is extremely handy. And I also sometimes use this once I have gone through and looked at it, confirmed that these are all issues, use that to then allow me to upload into things such as Jira so that we're all on the same page, and save me a bit of time, because creating Jira tickets manually is extremely painful. And if there's one thing I've learned over time is everyone seems to think because the testers are the ones that find the issues, they have to raise each individual ticket. Some of the organizations I've worked at have had hundreds of issues on a single page, and they're not willing to have me categorize them by WCAG criteria or, all criteria that is related. They want me to raise each as an individual issue. So having something that I can then export, check over, put some comments in, and then upload, my favorite tool, and I almost treat it like assistive tech. So finally, this brings us onto the Prodigy. Okay, this tool is going to blow your mind. I cannot live without it. I love it to death. So it is as awesome as the band, as perfect as Neo from the Matrix, as addictive as Mordor's Precious. Have I hyped this enough yet? Or do I need a drum roll? Well, yippee-ki-yay, stop, do not finish that sentence. So I have impressionable cats here, one called Stormageddon, who is causing a storm right now and trying to break in through my door. So if I have a kid distracted, that's what's going on. But I also don't want to be banned from Access U, where I'm going to be sharing this video, and I really want to come back next year, and I'm hoping to come in person and meet everyone. So Stylus is a real game changer, right? Whether it's for programmers, or it's for our professionals, or it's even just for peeved people with disabilities. PPWDs, help me coin that phrase, because I think it's brilliant. So why is this the chosen one? Why is this worth all the hype? Well, this tool allows you to override any piece of CSS on any website, and you can do with it what you please. So if you don't like those pretty pink buttons and you want them to be blue, you got it. You want to check if increasing the text size will not cause your website to look like hieroglyphics and have things overlapping other text or images. Bingo Yahtzee and Connect 4, it does that too. Maybe you're a keyboard only user and this website has not set up focus highlighting. Well, winner, winner, chicken dinner, it also does that. It is really versatile. So this plugin is part Yoda, part Mr. Miyagi, part Minerva Gonigal, part Ellen Ripley, and part Scooby-Doo, all rolled into one little plugin. So I am totally converted and love it. It is a game changer. Now, some of you are probably sitting there and going, well, that's all well and good, but how is this useful for testing and development and not just a piece of assistive tech? Okay, so I'm going to show you I'm going to talk you through a few scenarios that I have had on a fairly regular basis, and I'm sure that many of you have also experienced. So, an accessibility professional is sitting with the development team. Guys, that tap target doesn't look like it meets the minimum size requirements. Let me show you what the minimum size requirements look like and how big that button should be. All right, guys, we're currently focusing on an element that's off screen and doesn't have keyboard highlighting. Let me show you that. Hey guys, this website really poops its pants, or as we say in Australia, craps its dacks, when you increase the text. Right? The sizing, the kerning, it all overlaps and it looks like hieroglyphics and I can't use it. Let me show you that. Guys, those color ratios that you've used just don't work for this site. People are not going to be able to read them, even if they are your brand colors. So, you know, we can tweak your brand colors to make it more accessible. Let me show you how your site would look with those altered colors. Things that come up fairly regularly and a really quick way in one tool where you don't have to switch to show all of these. Now, a lot of you who are very knowledgeable about DevTools are sitting there thinking, yeah, but DevTools can do all of that. And you're right, DevTools can do all of that. But for DevTools, well, you really need to rewrite the CSS every time. So if you move to the page a second time, the CSS does not remain. So you have to change it every time you want to use that page, especially if you are using it as assistive tech. Now, the other issue that you often have with DevTools is it can be really hard to find the classes sometimes, and you've really got to hunt through to find all of that. And the other thing with DevTools is you need to understand CSS to be able to do it. So this tool, you don't necessarily need to have technical skills. I know I've said here, note some technical skills are required for operation, and look, for some operations, yes. But let's say, for example, you're navigating the web and think of an inaccessible site like Reddit was a few years back. Maybe you need to change that up so that you can use it. Well, you don't need to go and rewrite all the CSS for Reddit. There's a whole group of people, hundreds and thousands of people out there who have already written CSS to make Reddit more accessible. You just need to find that. And this tool connects you to those repositories. So, like I said, if you don't have the technical skills, you will still get benefit from this tool. All right, so let's go to a little demo. So I'm going to jump back into my browser. And because we've got a lot of things open here, I'm just going to grab the NYU and I'm going to throw it into a new window so that it is an unadulterated version of NYU. Now I'm going to come up to Stylus and I have a couple of saved styles. So the first one that I have here that I use very frequently is the WCAG. So this one I have named WCAG and it's looking at 1.2.12, which is all about your kerning. 1.4.12. I'm having a bad morning. So it's all about the kerning spacing. It's about the space between lines, the space between paragraphs, the space between words and letters. It's also about moving it to a default font. So if I want to now turn this on and see how this page is working, I can just click that button and as you can see, things have changed. It has done it. If I want to turn it back off, I can just turn it back off. Now, if I leave it on there and I jump over to a brand new browser window, it remembers that I have it on there. I don't need to reapply. Right? So that's pretty fantastic. Now, the other thing you can do is you can write styles for individual pages. So you can see here it says write styles for NYU. So I'm going to write a style for this. Now, I don't have the time to be rewriting and debugging CSS and, you know, for people that can do that live, by all means, but I have had some trouble with live demonstrations already today. So I'm going to copy this CSS that I've previously created and then I'll quickly walk you through what it's going to do. All right, so what this is going to do is it is going to change the background color on some of my menu items on the NYU page. And it's going to put it in like an olive green instead of the purple that is currently there. We're going to underline some of the footers that don't have underlines on their links because, well, I have to teach my mum how to use the internet. And unfortunately, if there is not an underline, she doesn't know it's a link. And I finally got her to accept that it doesn't have to be blue and underlined, but removing the underline is just a step too far. So to save me getting phone calls all the time, having this for my mum is fantastic. Now, I'm also going to change those big purple cards and I'm going to change them again to that olive green as well. This is going to look horrific, I do warn you, but this is the kind of stuff you could do with the site. Now, I'm going to come down, I'm going to increase the size of some of the cards, I'm going to decrease the size of some of the images. I'm just generally playing around so you can see just what you can accomplish with this tool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to tack on Access U on the end so that I know what I created this for. I'm going to hit save and then I'm going to go back to our NYU site. And ta-da, it is already up there, it's done its thing, and yeah, I admit it looks hideous, but hey, at least you can see the changes going on. So we've got some font size increases, we've got some of these cards that are of a particular type change, we've got some of our menu items are updated, we've shortened this image, we've squished it in, and if we go all the way down, you can see I now have links that have underlines on them. I possibly should have put some spacing because it is a little bit cramped, so I may have wanted to increase the spacing on that text, change the kerning a little bit. But now the other thing is I can stack CSS changes on top of this. So if I come back now and I also want to add the WCAG changes, I can. So you're not limited to just having one CSS operational. So really good time saver. And as I said before, if I jump into a new browser screen, I can't say it enough, it will keep all of those changes that I had left on there until I disable them. Now, I did mention that you don't necessarily need to have any coding skills to be able to use this tool. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you, if I go to Wikipedia, I tend to use dark mode more often than not, and I tend to use increased screen size. But for when I'm working with demos with people, that doesn't work for everyone. So I tend to use the normal standard Chrome usage. And as you can see, that means Wikipedia is extremely white. It's a lot of glare that I'm getting. So I don't want it to be white. I want it to be a darker color that I can work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to Stylus, and I already had the WCAG one on this. So I'm going to take that off for one thing. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and go Find Styles. And if I select Find Styles, it may take a little bit to process, so it does cache somewhat. So if this is the first time you're doing it, it'll take a little bit before it will show you options. So then underneath here, it will show you the different options that you could select. So these are different views of Wikipedia that people all around the world have set up. Now, I kind of like the first one, the deep dark theme, but I understand sometimes it can be really hard to understand what the theme does when it's in this little thumbnail view. So never fear, if that's not working for you, you can come into the little arrow and then you can go to User Styles World, and it will show you all of these styles that people have created. Now, if I come in here, I can see larger images of what these different styles do. And some of the images are broken just because my machine is running extremely slow, so it's starting to move them away. Now, one thing that you do want to know is that there is a tool that's called Stylish, not Stylus. Now, Stylus is free, it's open source, you can check the code, it will always be free. It has been committed to always being free. Stylish, unfortunately, is created by people that don't have your best interests at heart. It does snoop on browser content, and it does come with risk. So make sure you are only ever getting Stylus. And if you are having trouble finding that for the Chrome browser, then you can reach out, have a look at my website. I do have a blog article which will call out this, and if the information is not there with the links, usually I have the link to the Chrome browser, but if it's not there, reach out to me directly and I can send the link to you. So if you want to install one of these, you can come here and you can click it and you can get more information, and then you can come down and just hit install, or you can do it from the other version. So I'm just going to do it. I'm going to come back onto the NYU state. I'm going to, actually I was on Wikipedia. I'm going to come back onto Wikipedia. I'm going to do the same thing, go back to manage, find my styles. And this top one is the one that I usually use. So I'm going to click it, and I had uninstalled it for this demo. So now that I've clicked it, it's installed, and you can see here there's also, it's a bit hard to see, but there is a click to uninstall button. But now Wikipedia is in a format that I can use it without eye strain. So I find that extremely helpful. Now, if you do want to uninstall the theme, right, rather than just disabling it, you want to uninstall it. Maybe you are doing like me, demoing it to people, so you want to uninstall it so you can show them again. It's really simple. You can just come in here, you can say that I want to delete this, and now it is gone. And it's gone for good until you install it again. Now, if you want to edit one that you have done, then you can come in, you can click the edit button, and it just takes you into the same view that you looked at before, where we created and added the CSS. Okay, so that's it for my demos today, and I'm going to roll to some questions. So I know this isn't a live session anymore, so if you do have questions, I strongly encourage you to reach out via my email or to hit me up in Slack, and then you can ask any kind of questions that you have around different plugins. Now, I have a few questions of my own that I have prepared that you may be interested in. So one thing I get asked regularly is, Kylie, do you do children's parties? And no, I do not. Unfortunately, parents got sick of me going through all the wrapping paper and trying to steal the ribbons to make them into hair bows. But I do have a friend that legitimately is a clown, and she does kids parties. So if you need one, let me know. She also does face painting. Where do you buy your shoes? So I know you can't see my shoes at the moment because I'm on a video and I'm not in person, but I have the cutest pair of shoes. I have one shoe that currently is blue with an anime girl on it, and the other shoe is pink with an anime girl on it. And if you like those kind of quirky fashion, then go to poppingcandy.com.au and they will sort you out. And no, this is not a licensed advert, but I have probably bought, no, I still have more hair bows, but I probably have about 15 pairs of their cute and quirky shoes. Kylie, it's time to get serious. How many hair bows does one person need? So as I mentioned earlier, I have 52 hair bows. I counted them yesterday. I think I'll probably stop if I get to 100. Maybe not. Look, I have a real problem, I admit that, and I'm working on it. All right, I'm working on it. But that said, I don't have any accessibility themed hair bows, so I probably need to create some of those. Or hey, if anyone's interested in sending me ribbons or, accessibility themed hair bows, send them my way and I will wear them in a training course, I promise. All right, so thank you everyone then for this session. I would normally at this point go to real questions, but we don't have it at the moment. So a few questions that people often do ask is, will these plugins work in Mac? And no, unfortunately, the Chrome browser plugins that I've shown you do not work in Mac. However, there are great plugins that are available for Mac. So you can go to Safari's DevTools. You can go through AliTools Web Accessibility. They have a number of plugins listed. There is the AliTools extension. And there is the Accessibility Inspector as well. Now, again, for mobile, how do we use plugins on mobile? So different browsers will allow you to install Chrome plugins on mobile. So I recommend Kiwi browser. Any of the plugins that I have used, I can now use on my Android phone. I find it very useful and helpful because sometimes I don't want to be switching between my desktop and my mobile phone. I still always do testing on every one of the devices because it really is a necessary part of doing accessibility testing. But if I've already done predominant testing and maybe there's just something I quickly need to find so that I can copy it into a document that I'm now working on my mobile phone, I can find that really quickly using the same plugin. Now, I did show that on mobile devices, the Wave plugin does cause some problems. Some of the plugins are going to be like that. Some plugins don't work so well on mobile and some do. It's a little bit of a hit and miss, and you need to find what are your favorite plugins to use and try them out. So definitely Wave, Axe, and IBM Equals will work on mobile, and the others as well, like I said, majority do. Where is the 508 trusted testing? So it is released by dhs.gov, and I believe the website itself is called 508-training. So you should be able to find it there, and that will give you all of the information that you could possibly want around Andy and how to operate it. Finally, I know it's been coming up at a few different sessions that I've been out, people wondering around VPATs or voluntary product accessibility templates. So these are basically accessibility conformance reports, which tell about a particular piece of software, how accessible it is, and what accessibility criteria from the WCAG it fails to meet or it meets. AussieWay has actually created a product accessibility list. It's new, we're working on it, and we're adding more and more VPATs to it every day. And what this list does, it allows you to very clearly find VPATs for a lot of common applications that are out there, and then to actually be able to give it a score that makes sense to someone that maybe is not as well versed in VPATs or in procurement and accessibility procurement. So if you're a business stakeholder and want to get a feel for how accessible is this particular piece of software, you can interrogate this VPAT. Now, we are growing it, and AussieWay, while a professional membership organisation, it is predominantly run by volunteers. So if there's a product that you don't see there that you'd like to know more information about, from the website you can actually go and submit questions or recommendations for products that you would like to see. And if you are a software development company and you have a product that has a VPAT and you would like it added into this list, by all means, please reach out to us and we will make sure that we get that in for you. So I think that probably brings us towards the end. I just want to leave you with a couple of final notes. So hopefully after this session, you now have an understanding of where different plugins can work for different roles. You understand that all plugins have pros and cons. The important thing though is to understand the limitations. I won't be using Wave in the near future, but others will because it does not affect them in the same way. So keep that in mind. And one critical thing is if you are in an organization, now organizations often lock down plugins and lock down machines. It can be very challenging. So what I would say is just because everybody else in your team is using a specific plugin does not mean that other people in your team can use that plugin. So make sure that you have policies in place so that people can get the tools that they need. At one place where I worked, it took me over a month to get the tools that I needed because they told me, oh, we already have these plugins approved. That's what your team uses. And I had to say, well, look, sit down with me and I'll show you why I can't use that. So please make sure that you have those policies in place so people can get on with doing their job and not have to feel awkward or disclose that they have a disability. Now, the other thing you hopefully learn is that you do not need a large budget to get started on your digital accessibility journey. All of these plugins I've shown you today are free, with the exception of Funkify, which I did not show you for legitimate reasons. There are always new plugins coming onto the market, so you do need to keep an eye out and talk to people. If someone finds a new tool that is interesting to use, share it around, let people know. And finally, the other thing is that a plugin alone does not replace understanding the WCAG. So you still are going to need to do manual testing. You still need to have a good understanding of what the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines are and what you need to do to meet them. So no plugin can remove the need for that. Okay, so if you do want to reach out to me, this slide pack is available with Access U and my details are there on the screen. I'm always happy to chat about anything accessibility related. So please don't hold back, reach out, and I hope to see you all again soon.